hard work being a federal judge in Trump's America. But I don't want to cede America to Donald Trump. I want to cede it, and I want to give it over to federal judges with a shout out. Because if it wasn't for the several hundred federal judges who are working overtime to protect our democracy, we'd be in quite a pickle. And I want to focus now on Judge Boasberg, Chief Judge of the District Court in Washington, presides over all things grand jury, presided over things related to the grand jury and Donald Trump when he was a criminal defendant. And now he's taken on the Trump administration, restarting, reviving his criminal contempt proceedings against them in a way that only he can. Who's going to be brought in for witnesses? How hard is the Trump administration going to fight it? Are they going to allow Emil Bovee, Donald Trump's former criminal defense lawyer, now on the Third Circuit Court of Appeals in Philadelphia, an appellate court judge, come in and testify to Judge Boasberg? I don't know. We're going to find out, though. How about Erez Ruveni, who's now with Democracy Forward and who was fired for telling the truth? Is he going to be a witness with his 38-page whistleblower complaint? Probably. We cover it all on Legal AF, the podcast. Take a minute, and here's a clip. Welcome back to the midweek edition of Legal AF. Case number 2. We're kind of pulling together like 5 years of teaching and being together and communing over the law and politics in these cases. Chief Judge Boasberg in D.C. back in March, that's how old this matter is, right at the beginning of the Trump administration when they try to use the Alien Enemies Act to start deporting human beings without due process in the middle of the night, sometimes children, sent 200 Venezuelans to El Salvador to be tortured at the CCOT prison in return for El Salvador getting $6 million from the United States. And Boasberg didn't like it, especially when the ACLU ran into court early and said they're fueling the jets and they're sending them to El Salvador away from your federal jurisdiction after the suit was filed, Judge. And he said, no, they're not. I'm going to hold a hearing. And he held a hearing, and he ordered that all planes that hadn't left yet be grounded. He ordered the ones that were in the air be returned, and they didn't do any of that. Then they sent in a purposeful, willfully blind lawyer named Drew Ensign, who said to the judge, I don't know, I told him about your order, Judge, but I don't know what they're doing. And, and that was all a lie. And how do we know that? Because there's a whistleblower named Erez Ruveni, who I just learned today, has joined Democracy Forward, working with Sky Perryman as a new lawyer. Boy, is he going to be a secret weapon for Sky in her 100 cases that she's, especially in ones involving immigration. And so hats off and congratulations to Sky Perryman, Democracy Forward, and Erez Ruveni. And Erez had a 35-page or so whistleblower complaint right at the time that Emil Bovee, Donald Trump's former criminal defense lawyer and number 3 in the Department of Justice, was nominated and up for confirmation hearing to be on the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. So there he is, sitting in Philadelphia, of all places. And Emil Bovee said, I was promoted on March the 13th or 14th, right around the time of the hearings with Judge Boasberg. And right after I was promoted, I was ushered into a room. And I was there with all the other immigration litigation people for the Department of Justice. And there was Emil Bovee, who told us in no uncertain terms that we are to hide the fact that we're using the Alien Enemies Act to whisk people out of the country, and that we're to tell judges who ask about it to go F off. Literally, to go F off. And he was very, very concerned about that, and he refused to do it. He then phoned in for a hearing with Judge Boasberg, the one I'm talking about now, in which he says Drew Ensign, who was his boss, effectively lied to Judge Boasberg about the planes and where they were located. I still think they're lying, because I read the new filing they made last night, Karen, and they still are fudging the timeline of when planes were or were not in the air. So Judge Boasberg, started a contempt proceeding. He asked the ACLU if they wanted contempt. They said yes. He started a contempt proceeding. Now, subsequent to that, he started in April. The United States Supreme Court blocked his earlier temporary restraining order and found that he didn't have the power to do that. But this is a different issue. This isn't about whether his order later was overturned by the Supreme Court. The question is, at the time, it was a valid and binding federal court order from one branch to another, whether you're allowed to just thumb your nose at it and flout and say, well, I think you're going to be reversed one day, so I'm just going to keep flying my planes away from federal jurisdiction and oversight. And I think the answer to that question is no. And there's just case law that's longer than my arm that's out there about you have to comply with the federal court order unless and until you're told otherwise by an appellate court. And you can't just on your own use self-help and violate it. So after a bunch of appeals, he restarted this hearing. And the first thing he said at the hearing a couple of days ago, Karen, was, I want to hear from Erez Ruveni, which is exactly what you and I had said. When Erez Ruveni's 35 pages came out, whistleblower, I said, there's two people that are going to want to hear from Erez Ruveni, Judge Zinnes about the Abrego Garcia case and Judge Boasberg, because now we have the answer. Why weren't they listening to Boasberg and Zinnes in their orders? Because Emil Bovee told the lawyers not to listen to the judges and effectively told the Homeland Security Director, Kristie Noem, to keep flying the planes and we'll deal with it later. So now we got this amazing potential hearing with some very interesting guest appearances under oath to talk to Judge Boasberg. What do you think, Karen?
Look, this one's going to be interesting because Kristie Noem says that she sought legal advice, right, about whether or not they had to listen to Boasberg's order. So they're admitting that he gave an order, but it was an oral order at the time, right? He said it on the record orally. And so she claimed she sought, and I'm putting air quotes for people who are listening and not watching, legal advice from Todd Blanche, Emil Bovee, and others, and asking them, do I have to listen or not? And she's claiming that they gave her legal advice that she didn't have to listen and she sent the planes off. Now, the reason I bring that up is because there's a defense, right? There's this advice of counsel defense. She can kind of rely on that in this criminal contempt proceeding that's happening in front of Judge Boasberg when he's looking at whether to bring criminal contempt. She's going to lean on I was relying on advice of counsel, which is, I think this one's going to be hard because this is not really within the law, within the bounds of the law. Of course, an oral order of a judge is enforceable. I mean, I was thinking when I read that's their position, that, well, it wasn't in writing. Well, first of all, it was on the record, meaning it was transcribed by a court reporter. Therefore, it is in writing. And I'm thinking about all the times there are never writings, like in an emergency search warrant that you have to do orally, or an emergency eavesdropping warrant that you have to do orally. Those have complete full effect in cases, right? Judges orally do things. Or if a judge tells you to do something or orders you to do something on the record and you don't, then they can hold you in contempt. Not everything comes out in a written order. I mean, so to me, it's just such a preposterous position to take that they are taking, that this was advice of counsel. So this is going to be, I think, a major hearing where they're going to try to call Emil Bovee, who was at the time the number 2 at the Department of Justice, but is now an appellate judge, a federal appeals court judge. So I don't know how you call a federal appeals court judge to testify. That'll be interesting. And Todd Blanche, who's currently, right, the number 2 at the DOJ, who's going to have to also talk about this, that they gave this advice. But I mean, what a pickle they've created by making these claims.
Bovee was 3 and Blanche was 2.
Sorry, I demoted him, or I promoted him. I apologize.
Yeah. And now Stan Woodward is number 3, who just showed up on the 46 people who donated to Donald Trump in his transition campaign. 5 of them are now in the administration, including Howard Lutnick, Linda McMahon, Stan Woodward, and a couple of other people. Talk about pay to play. All right. So we're going to see what's going to happen with Judge Boasberg. There's going to be appeals again. And already the administration, I said in an earlier hot take today that the Boasberg's not going to be pleased with the filing by the Department of Justice, which effectively told him to go pound sand, that he was wrong, that the appellate process said he was wrong, that they were not in contempt. And then they fudged which I think is another perjury problem, except it wasn't done under oath, but it's a problem for the lawyers who signed that pleading. I think they got the the time of the planes wrong, because I've seen earlier versions that the judge was focused on, which said some of those planes were not out of U.S. airspace. And I think now they've wallpapered over that they just elided over it with a little flick of the pen or the computer screen. And I think they're going to be in big trouble. But, Boasberg, they're trying to undermine Boasberg left and right. You got Pam Bondi saying he's a terrorist enabler. I mean, just crazy shit to say out loud by the chief legal officer, the Attorney General of the United States, against a federal judge. I mean, I can't wait. I wish I could just time travel to the end of this administration and get a Democrat back in office and get the Department of Justice right again. And if I never hear, it's like a silent movie star. Like I never want to hear from the Attorney General unless I really have to. Instead of these crazy, insufferable press conferences, with her resting Attorney General face that she's developed. Do I need to see this? I mean, this isn't wallpapering over your defects, your lack of ethics, your lack of leadership and independence as an Attorney General, and it's not working with the American people. So I don't know why they continue to play this card, except they're pandering to the only person that matters to them, which is Donald Trump. But woe be them if we're right that the slip on power has happened, and Donald Trump, who's already putting the lid on his day at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and and all of that, they don't have presidential immunity, and some of the things that they're within a 5-year statute of limitations for some of the crimes that they have committed. They act so imperiously, so like they're never going to be caught for what they're doing. They are. And I think they're starting to realize it as we're watching the implosion of the MAGA movement. It's all you can call it. Mike Johnson's not going to be there through the midterms. It's not just Marjorie Taylor Greene. It's going to be the permission that Marjorie Taylor Greene has given to others in her party to throw up the middle finger to the White House and say, I'm tired of being abused by effing Stephen Miller. Who elected him? Who elected Pam Bondi? Who elected any of these people other than Trump? And if there's 3, 4, 5 people that go, I'm out, even before the midterms, forget about playing with the maps, the congressional maps. They'll lose their hold on power in Congress now. And it's just, I don't know what they thought. It's just the abuse of power. They just got power mad, drunk on power. And we'll have to.
I agree with you, Popok, that for the first time, we're really seeing fissures in the MAGA movement. You're really seeing that there is infighting, there are problems, there are people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and others who are fed up with the fact that the Trump administration is not doing what they said they were going to do. And it's not just Epstein transparency that they promised and assured everyone that they were going to be, but it's also putting America first, right? No, prices aren't going down. Trump is flying all around the Middle East and buying up companies for his own edification and making him and his family members more wealthy and not spending time at home. I read something recently talking about how he seems really tired and he's falling asleep and he doesn't come down from his part of the White House until noon, and then he stops all his meetings at 5. I mean, I think you're really starting to see that he is ailing, he's aging, and he's really losing his support from a lot of his base. And I think he feels it because you can see by what he's panicking about with his screeds. So it's interesting. And I think you're 100% right. We're seeing it, and we're seeing it play out in real time, and nothing could make me happier.
Look at the 6 paragraphs that he wrote against the New York Times reporter who wrote a story about what we're watching with our own eyes. His flagging energy, his putting a lid on the day early. And then he called her, I mean, he can't help himself. He called her ugly inside and out, the failing New York Times. Here we go. I stopped 8 wars. What wars?
I know. Name one. Forget 8.
So, I mean, even Ukraine, Russia, they bombed Ukraine yesterday. 9 more people died. What war is ended? So it's just that implosion we were hoping for. I didn't think it was going to happen in month 10 or in, so soon, but it's here and we need to capitalize on it. Welcome back. We sit at the intersection of law and politics so you don't have to. Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern time on the podcast we call Legal AF. It is the foundation upon which all my Legal AF work is based. Legal AF, the YouTube channel. You're here now. Hit the free subscribe button. No outside investors, no paywall, but we need your help to build this community as we turn into 2026. Can't do it without you. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popak. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.